I'm trying to fly high, but I'm not a pilot, can't deny it. There's some days I feel idiotic.
Hello, Lewis from Valkyrie Canine Services, back again today. We've got some pretty terrible weather out there today, so I can't really film a video outside. Everything would get absolutely drenched. So I thought what I would do is I would just have a little conversation with the camera today, talk about something dog related. Earlier a client asked me what the difference between prey and defense was. I figured I might as well make that into a video. The first thing we need to do here is we need to define our terms. So we're looking at prey drive and defense drive. What are they? Prey drive is a pretty wide term and it covers a lot of behaviors. Colloquially, we tend to talk about prey drive in protection as the desire to chase, catch and kill. But prey drive is an animal's desire to hunt and seek out food. So all those behaviors under that umbrella all come into prey drive. So when you're seeing a collie stalk, that's prey drive. When you're seeing a point-to-point, that's prey drive. But in the context of protection, it doesn't really help us. So when we say prey drive in protection, we're generally specifically talking about a dog's desire to chase, to catch and to kill something. Obviously consuming all comes into that as well, but we don't really want a dog to be consuming our decoys. There's not enough of them to go around if they're all getting eaten all the time. The next one is defense drive. So defense, again, is an innate desire within a dog to protect itself. So defense drive drives an animal to protect itself. Now, you could say fight and flight system is all part of that defense drive. So running is also a way to defend yourself. So flight is part of defense. Obviously, when we're talking about protection dogs, we ideally don't want our dogs to be running away. But the general gist is that defense is a dog's desire or need to protect itself from whatever it might be. So let's look a little bit deeper into those drives now. So prey, how do we use prey in protection work to develop a dog? Now, as I said before, we've got the predatory cycle. So the predatory cycle goes like this. An animal sees its prey, it stalks its prey, it chases its prey, it catches its prey, it kills its prey, then it may relocate its prey or dissect and consume its prey. So which part of this do we need in protection? Now, we obviously need the dog to see the decoy, so that's an important part. The stalk is not so important within our confines of what we need in protection, so we don't generally use the stalk. Is it applicable or useful in some behaviors? Maybe, but for the most part, we don't need that. So we've got the sight, don't need the stalk. Chase. Chase is really important. Obviously, if the decoy's over there or the bad guy's over there, we need our animal to chase after him and then do the next one, which is catch. So we've got the catch and the kill. Now, the catch and the kill, these are two parts that are very important, and we put a lot of emphasis into these parts. So ideally for us, when our dog catches, we want our dog to catch with a nice full mouth. Now in the real world, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes we're going to get a little bit less. Sometimes we're going to get a bit of a funny angle or something like that, depending on how it's been presented. Now I'm not talking specifically about sports, because a sport decoy should be given the same presentation every time. But if we look to the wild, when we look at animals catching things out there, or if we just look at real life situations where you're running after someone who isn't going to present their arm, then we may not get a great initial strike. So that catch is the very first bite. It can be however it needs to be. The ideal picture is this, but that is the catch. The next bit is the kill. So we need to look at what that kill bit means. When we say kill, what do we mean? So if you watch any animal as it takes its prey down, the next step is to go for that kill bite. So when you see a lion take down a zebra, they usually move to the face and they suffocate the animal. So they'll bite, and when they can, they'll push in deeper over its mouth and they'll hold and they'll crush and they'll suffocate the animal. Now, most wild canines don't do that. They work in numbers, so it's a lot of just everyone pounce on this guy and we'll chew him till he's dead. So what we're looking to emphasize when we say the catch in protection, the kill in protection, is when the decoy gives you an opportunity, or when the adversary gives you an opportunity, you're going to push in and you're going to bite down even harder. So you do this, you continue to push in, you continue to bite down harder, you will subdue the enemy. That's our kill part. Now, the relocate, the dissect and consume, these are all parts that are completely useless to us. We don't need any of those. With the exception of the relocate, in earlier stages of protection, we may slip the sleeve and let the animal run it round. So we're fulfilling a genetic part of the dog's desire, but it's not something that we're going to need in a fully trained dog. And the last two we obviously don't need. Now, defense drive. What do we mean when we talk about defense drive? So again, as I said earlier, defense drive is a dog's desire to protect itself. And we can kind of mix that into the prey. So if you watch an animal being taken down, it's going to put up some form of a fight. It may even do it pre-bite. It may stop and charge, or especially if it's trying to protect its young, it might try and fight the animal. So an animal has to be able to switch from I'm chasing this to I'm protecting myself. If you run straight into a buffalo, that buffalo is going to squash you. So you need to be able to swap drives in order to handle the situation properly. So how do we use defense drive? What do we get from the defensive drive? When we've got the dog on the arm, if I start fighting the dog and I start to put pressure on the dog, that's going to swap the dog into defense drive. Now, if the dog's uncomfortable there, then this is where we're going to get that flee behavior. If he's uncomfortable being fought with, his best scenario to protect himself is to flee away from that. Again, in protection, we don't want that. We want a dog that is going to be able to switch into his defensive drive. He's going to be able to take a little bit of a fight from the decoy, and his answer to that is going to be to fight harder. So if I make the dog defensive and I fight with the dog and I use some pressure on the dog and the dog fights, then I'm going to switch back to prey, and we're going to give the dog a big win from that, where he feels a large amount of satisfaction that something's come at him, something's gone to fight him, and then he's been able to subdue that and turn it into prey. Not just a weaker adversary, but prey, something that he's going to dominate, take down, and later kill. So it's a very strong genetic reinforcer for the dog to be able to go from having a fight, putting the fight in, and then getting a nice relief from that pressure. Now, some other things we need to think about with defense drive is that there are limits to it. So every single animal is going to have two thresholds in its defensive drive. The first threshold is going to be the threshold that switches the dog into defense. So if that's really low, then the dog's going to be able to switch in defense off very little. So you might see that come into fruition from a dog just being looked at. The dog might just be looked at by someone, and that might kick him into a mode where he feels like he needs to defend himself. Generally, not always, but generally when you've got a dog with such a low threshold to start action, you're going to find that their second threshold, which is their threshold going into avoidance, is going to be a little bit lower. So if I've got a dog that feels like he needs to defend himself from a bug on the floor, likelihood is it's not going to take all that much more pressure to make that dog go, okay, I need to flee to protect myself. That's the only way out of this. As I said, that's not always the case. You might just get some of those dogs that are just like, I'm having it with absolutely everyone. My avoidance threshold is non-existent and I'm having it with everyone. But those dogs are very difficult to work with. So what we look for in a dog is to have a fairly stable first level of aggression. So we don't want him to be kicking off for absolutely everything. You don't need to defend yourself from everything, but you should be able to read situations that are genuinely threatening and then react to them in a defensive drive. And the next one, the second threshold, we want that way up here. We want that avoidance threshold through the roof if we can have it there, because what we don't want is a dog that's going to get into the fight, realize it's too much of a fight for him, and then pack up and run. So that's the ideal dog, somewhere in the middle down here, and then way up here with the avoidance threshold. But that's not every dog. So sometimes what we need to do with dogs is we're going to get them into their defensive drive, and then especially if they've got a much stronger prey drive, then we can just tap on the door of their avoidance threshold, make them feel a little bit uncomfortable in there, make them feel like, oh, I don't know about this situation. Let me try something. Let me try to fight a little bit harder. So they fight that little bit harder, boom, and then that prey comes, and what happens is the prey just knocks that avoidance threshold up a little bit. They feel that little bit stronger, and they're able to manage future situations better. So because they've learned to handle that stress, because they've learned that this isn't the end of the world, I don't need to run from this, my answer is to fight harder, we start knocking that threshold up and up and up, and then we can kind of balance it with the prey. So we don't need a dog that is an absolute well-beaten, horrible, savage beast in order to do protection. We just need a dog that's got the adequate amount of desire to chase and catch something, and then a good amount of defensive drive with a moderate to high avoidance threshold in order to be able to work with the animal. If we have that dog that I talked about initially that's quick to anger and then has low avoidance threshold, likelihood is that's not going to be a great protection animal. So we tend to wash those ones away and start again with a new dog there. As I've already discussed a little earlier, what we need to do to create a well-balanced and strong protection dog is we need to find balance. So we can have dogs that are really strong prey monsters where they just want to chase, catch and kill everything, or we can have those dogs that are quick to defense, high threshold, want to kill everything because they're sort of threatened by it in a sense, not necessarily fearfully, but threatened by it in a sense. Neither of those dogs tend to be the most workable and best dogs. The best dog is that dog that's in the middle. He's got very high prey and he's got strong biddable amount of defense. When we've got that, we can train a dog very easily, so the dog can learn to read situations through lots of repetition, that this is a moment I need to feel defensive and strong and aggressive, and this is a moment where I need to be calm or chase, catch, kill, whatever it might be there. So what are the weaknesses of each of those drives? As we've just kind of talked about there, a dog that's too strong or too quick to defense and not great with its avoidance threshold, its weakness is that if you're stuck there and you can't get out of that drive, then if we continue to stack and stack and stack pressure, then flee's your only option there. So that's the weakness of a defensive dog. The weakness of a highly preyly driven dog is prey's a very, very strong drive. If you think the size of the animals that some animals take down in prey drive, the amount that they're willing to be kicked, stood on, flipped over, all of that in order to get to the prey, because it's such an essential drive. If you don't catch that prey, you die. Yeah, it might hurt, but you will die if you don't catch that prey. So it's a very, very strong drive, which means when you get these prey monsters, these dogs that are so strongly driven in prey, that you never even see their defensive drive because they're just so driven to chase and catch. They can be a little bit tricky to work with. You have to take a very methodical and technical approach towards them. There's lots of drive capping and stuff like that in order to teach that dog that you can have that bite at the end, but you have to do something for it first. There's a way to unlock that, and it isn't just by running through fire and brimstone to get there. If we fuel that belief with one of those dogs, if we make that dog believe that there's absolutely nothing that can stop you from getting there, it can be a very, very difficult animal to work with. Now, conversely, when I say that, we obviously do want our dogs to believe that they can get through absolutely anything to get the bite, but you need to be very clever with one of these dogs that are just stupidly prey driven, because it's you that's got to handle it at the end of the day. If you just make it an absolute monster and you don't do any other training with it, then you're going to have a lot of dog on your hands and it's going to be quite troublesome. But if you like that kind of dog and you like that kind of thing, that's cool, man. I appreciate that. They're entertaining to watch, those dogs. I think that's about all I can really say on those right now off the top of my head. So if you have any other questions about what I've just talked about, if you think I missed something, if you want me to go deeper onto something, then just let me know in the comments below. Other than that, I've been Lewis again. You've been you again. If you liked the video, like, comment, subscribe. Let's get these videos out, and I'll see you next time.